My name is Reed Alexander, and in this video I will be discussing some things for beginners in 3D printing and what to know before buying a 3D printer or just starting in general. The first thing is that setting up a 3D printer is pretty difficult, especially if it doesn't have auto bed leveling or even the option for auto bed leveling, because manually leveling the bed is quite frustrating because you have to level each of the corners, and then every time you level each of the corners, the other corners get unlevel or not the way you left them because you're raising part of another part of the bed, and so it takes quite a while sometimes to level the bed to where it needs to be to get a successful print. Also, sometimes prints won't stick very well at all, and that's another thing that can happen that's pretty frustrating. And but using a glue stick or a build tack or just tape will normally work for the print sticking for PLA. I haven't printed with ABS though, so I can't say anything about that. Another thing is failing prints because of either a G code that didn't generate right or just bad settings, and it isn't exactly a failed print, but it just doesn't turn out the way you want it. So whenever you get a printer, you can't exactly expect just flawless results on the first print or even the first few prints, because you have to tune the settings for the slicer, which is what converts an STL file or basically a 3D model into a file the 3D printer can read and print from. So it's not just always perfect prints, but normally the G-code files on the SD card that the manufacturer sends with the printer are going to turn out very good and smooth, because they know the settings to use with that printer and they have a lot of experience using it. So that's another thing. But once you get the settings right, it's there's not many things that go wrong with printing. But leveling the bed is an extremely important thing, because if the nozzle height is too low or too high, then the print or the filament will just be smashed down if it's too low, or if it's too high, then it won't stick and it'll just have a big string blob whenever the print's finished, supposedly. And so you're going to want to monitor the print and go in and make sure it's printing, especially whenever you first start. Now in the slicer you can enable things like a skirt, which is where it basically does one, or you can add multiple skirt lines to the G code to where it will outline the print, and that basically gets make sure that that the filament doesn't have anything on it like a blob that will mess up the print or make the quality worse. So that's one thing to think about. There's also rafts, and that's where it basically creates a layer under the print for the print to stick to. But I prefer using a skirt for the adhesion type. And I also recommend using Cura and just using the recommended settings for your first print just to get used to it, because you also have to know what retraction type the printer that you are using prints well with, how many millimeters of filament it retracts when moving over a non-printed surface. And a good way to do this is to just get a file that you can just look them up on the internet for a retraction test file, and it's just going to be like a square with two columns going up side by side, but probably about like an inch apart. And the more string in between the columns whenever the printer prints it, the worse retraction that it is. So you're going to either need to decrease the amount of retraction or increase it, because sometimes if you turn retraction off, it still needs to be, or it needs some retraction to have the best quality. So that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching.